Hey guys, Luke here from Anything Scout, and today we're going to look at a Scout. I'd done one of these videos in the past where we kind of reviewed a truck and I talked about what I saw, and it was not my intention to negatively impact the auction that the truck was on at the time. The intention is to educate people about what we look for when we're looking at these trucks and what our years of experience, I've been doing this about a decade, and just what that time has shown me in particular things to look for, what it's supposed to look like stock, where some people classic to like cut corners, that kind of stuff. So just trying to educate people about how to go about looking at these trucks if you're going to buy it, because nobody wants to, it's always risky buying a truck online, so nobody wants to buy it and then get it and then just be devastated and disappointed and feel like you got rooked. So I don't think anybody wants that. Any good sellers don't want that, and any buyers don't want that. So we're just trying to educate people so they know what they're looking at, so everybody's happy in the end. So what we have today is a 1972 International Scout 2. It has an LS swap in it, and so we'll just get going here. So obviously been restored, repainted, freshened up all the way around. And some of these larger exterior pictures, I mean, you can kind of get, if there's something blatantly wrong, you can see it, but otherwise you kind of need to dig into the details. So right off the bat, it's got some unique wheels. They look like a US wheel, just kind of a steel stamped wheel, fairly inexpensive, but gives it a unique look, which is kind of cool. It looks like they chrome plated this original grill, and that's an original 71, 72 grill, so that's correct for this era truck. Lots of times all the grills are pretty much interchangeable in the Scout 2s. So lots of times people switch those around, but this looks like it's the original of this truck, just been re-chromed or chromed. Turn signals are got like a whiteout lens just for styling, I guess. Hopefully they have like an amber bulb behind there, because I think that might be illegal if there's no color to it. So kind of a styling thing. Originally those were amber from the factory. So we'll just get cruising along here. Yeah, re-chrome, freshened up bumpers, or just super nice original Scout 2 front bumper. Got the side exhaust dump there, kind of custom. Again, pretty, like, the trim appears to be in incredible shape. That all looks original to me. It's hard to tell with this, and they had this in a studio, so they obviously put some money behind taking photos of this truck. So I don't know if this is a bigger car collector or a group or a shop that takes it somewhere. Who knows? So this rear bumper is interesting, because some of these, and maybe if you guys know the history more, you can school me, because the front bumper has a recess for the license plate, and you can see the little holes there. The rear bumper, I think on maybe just the later ones, doesn't have this recess. It's just flush straight across, but this one doesn't have the holes, so it could be an earlier model thing. Some of those little details elude me, so if you guys know that, I'm curious to learn. Okay, so right off the bat here, what I look for is even body gaps around here, and you'll notice on the liftgate to tailgate, you got maybe, I don't know, 3/8 gap over here, and then it goes down to 0. So I'm guessing that's rubbing. You're going to get a little paint wear there probably, if it's not already. And typically what that means is either the tailgate's mounted kind of crooked, which it doesn't look to be, because the tailgate to the body lines all line up good, and then these gaps around the edge of the tailgate look good. So number 2 is these lift gates, the hinges almost always go bad, because the way the lift gate, you're pushing down when you slam it, and then the latches actually pull it down more and stress these top latches, and so those tend to just rip out of the sheet metal because it's pretty thin up there. And so that's pretty classic. So on this truck, I would say you'll probably have to do some sheet metal work to get that latch kind of fixed up and re-square that lift gate. So they obviously repainted all this, but somebody kind of missed that step when they were doing that, or didn't think it was worthy of time. So that's all I'm seeing so far, as far as structure, body, kind of bigger picture items. Keep cruising along. What I do like to see is, you can barely make it out here, this rear corner cap to rear quarter panel. That is a seam right there. And when you don't see that seam, it means people just kind of bondoed over this whole thing, which means they don't really know what they're doing, or there was a lot of kind of rust and they put a bunch of Bondo in there, or yeah, who knows. But I just like to see those original. The more original seams and body lines you can see, gives you little clues that it's a cleaner and cleaner truck. So this one, another line you can barely make out here. Around the rear quarter panels, there should be, it's not super crisp, but it should be just crisp enough. So if it's too crisp, that means there's Bondo. If it's smoothed over right here, there's Bondo, obviously. So this one looks, and they're tough to recreate. So this one either had replacement quarters or it's had nice original quarters. And maybe some of the pictures will get more into that. Because repainted trucks are always a gamble. You never know who did how much work to it and how, like, to what level. Did they fully restore this correctly, or did they just skimp it and this is just a show truck? So we'll try and dig in and see if we can learn more and more about that. And by show truck, I mean it's just meant to look good, not meant to necessarily survive, have the longevity. So again, these body lines in the front fender look pretty good and even, not too crisp, not too dull. So I think this was a decent truck, or they put decent panels back on it. And we'll try to go through a little quick here, not waste too much time. It's got the original side mirrors. Either the antenna's missing or it's got like a retractable situation added up in there. Stock spring under, but it's got maybe, I would guess, a 4-inch lift to it. Ooh, wide boy tires. Okay, we'll keep moving along here. So again, this is the original trim around the outside. They put some aftermarket headlights in, not necessarily my style. I like more of the OG headlights, but if you actually want to see at night, these brighter ones are good. Again, it should have like matching amber lights here with the clear ones. And there were some year difference. So again, those year specifics. I'm not an encyclopedia scout expert. So if you guys know some of that stuff, school me on it. And I know that's kind of ironic to say, but as I'm doing like a scout critique video. Yep, so there's that antenna hole. Maybe it's a retractable or it's just pushed down or something. I don't know, not a big deal. Stock mirrors, all this original window trim and gaskets seem pretty decent. Original emblems, bumpers. Kind of get through this. Okay, so here it's a 72, and 72 on the rear tail lights would actually have a chrome housing and then a lens that screws into that. So this is the later model, like 77 to 80. It's just a single housing unit that replaces that chrome, because a lot of times the chrome is either rusted out, crumbling, or it's just pitted or whatever. So this is a pretty classic replacement for restorations. Is you can just buy these as a unit, just slaps right in there. Functions perfectly fine. Just little model changes to note. Oh boy. Side exhaust. Top been repainted heavily. Nothing to see in the gutters. Looks like it has original wipers on it. Okay, starting to get some more details. So we can see it's got updated seats, speakers, new gauges. So we'll get in closer here. So this stuff, again, a lot of this is like, some of this stuff isn't necessarily bad or good, but it tells you just the level. It gives you an idea of how far they went with this build. So a lot of these hinges and latches and wear points, those originally were just like zinc plated from the factory, and when they've been painted over like this, it just tells you they didn't take it off, so they just painted them. And that could be choice. It could be they were trying to save that 2 hours of labor of taking all the door latches and tailgate latches off, and so they just painted over everything, because it looks like these liftgate latches and arms are white, so they just left all that on there and just blasted everything out. Typically that's the sign of they're just trying to save some time and save money, which lets you know maybe how they're going to do the rest of the build. But it could just be a style choice. And again, doesn't necessarily change the function or longevity. Okay, so getting to the interior, custom round gauges, new machine dash knobs. I'm guessing those are just kind of a unique generic, not unique generic, but just standard dash knobs. They did go with different shifters, automatic and transfer case. Oh, sorry. So they covered the dash panel with leather or vinyl or something, which is a good look. Really cleans up the dash because those are always cracked. However, the reason they're always cracked is because they're always in the sun, and that just shrinks material from heat, UV, whatever. So with covering it, that material's going to do the same thing but at an exponential rate. And so you either have to keep your trucks inside or condition this stuff a lot, because it will shrink and then it'll just start to warp and stretch rear, or things will crack and rip. So just something to be aware. We used to cover a lot of dashes, and then for the longevity of the trucks we don't really do that anymore. I'm not really sure what this center console, that doesn't look like a Tuffy or a Max build, so maybe it's like Smitty or something like that, just kind of a generic. Oh my, I might have to take a break here. So it's got a little microphone stuck under the steering column. Not my favorite place for that. It's typically a mic that hooks up to the radio so you can take calls, because this is a retro sound radio, so you can hook up Bluetooth, hook up your phone to it, take calls over the radio, play your music, whatever. Location of that mic just looks like it's going to pick up farts, but hey, who knows, man. So matching dash knob, that's good that those are all matching at least. They're not original, but they are matching. Obviously aftermarket wood steering wheel. Again, not my style, but I know a lot of people do like the wood wheels, so it gives it kind of a classic look. We typically stick with the stock automatic shifter. They did not do this, so it's possible this was a manual truck. And then actually, you're right, based on this pedal, the automatic pedals are centered, and this one's offset because typically there's a clutch pedal over here. So they just took the clutch pedal off of the pedal assembly and then got, I'm guessing, a reproduction tunnel cover panel here, and then put in this B&M shifter, and then, I don't know, it's from an old Chevy or something, some generic transfer case shifter. So little things like that can, again, it's just that's how they chose to do it. Not necessarily good or bad, but unique stuff to look for. Got some speakers up here, kind of nice little tweeter option. Speakers in the door. It does have, I don't know if there's better pictures of it. There's a steering wheel, lots of gauges. So here you get a little glimpse behind the dash, and you kind of see some garbly up here, which just tells you there was original paint that they just kind of got scraped off or whatever, and they painted over it, so it doesn't get sandblasted. Not a big thing, not something you really see. This is unfortunately kind of a unique angle to see it. But again, it just starts to tell you that level of, okay, this wasn't sandblasted, this wasn't like taken down to bare metal everywhere. Just lets you in on that level of restoration. Retro sound radio, those are pretty sweet. We use those a ton. Full digital, great system. Vintage air units, this is what I was starting to say earlier. They took out the original heater control knobs and put in this unit, which goes to this underdash unit. So I'm guessing they also took the heater box out of the engine bay to run full vintage air. It looks like it doesn't. There's maybe some cuts in the dash panel that you can barely see. That vintage air cover plate doesn't, yeah, right there. So you can see some of that. So it doesn't quite cover it, very close, but not quite. Here's some of that underdash unit, the new vintage air unit. I think they make a great product. We haven't used this setup before, so I couldn't speak to it, but I think all their stuff is good quality. Again, some close-ups of the wrap, kicker, speakers. They do have wood sill plates here, which is an interesting choice. Those are typically an aluminum thing. Keeps the carpet down, holds the seal in place here. I'm not sure this one's holding the seal in place. Wood is an interesting choice because Scouts leak. They all leak water. If you ever go through a car wash, if you're ever out in the rain, it's gonna leak water. And then the floors slant outward, and so the water collects right here. So with wood there, who knows what kind of wood it is, but might get a little soggy. So to the big cushy seats. I'm still youngish and dumb, and so I tend to go for kind of the aesthetics of seats over the comfortability. That's not necessarily how our customers go, and that's not necessarily how a lot of other people go. These seats, I'm not a fan of this style in trucks, but I get it. It's comfortable. Assuming all these electrics work and they integrate all that, that's a unique thing. Makes it just kind of a next level of usability, I suppose. So, and here's more of those latches that just got painted. Those shouldn't be painted. It just starts to wear and flake and chip. So just one of those. One more thing. Again, on this side, big old seats. It looks like they do have electrical there, so hopefully that stuff's all wired up and functions. Kind of cool. Seat belts are unique. We typically tie into the roll bar if you got it there, but I'm guessing these seats are built for it, so shouldn't have any safety issues. Stock rear seat recovered to match the fronts, pretty powerful. It's got padding on the roll bar, which is nice. You're not slam jamming your knees and your noggin into everything as you're bahaing around. Pretty clean little setup. Just kind of a standard carpet kit. We sell these on the website. We install them. They're an okay kit. It just depends on how you install it and the fit and finish. So far it all looks nice. Stock door panels recovered. Stock door handle, stock armrest recovered. This is an aftermarket window regulator. Same ones we sell on our website. Same ones a lot of people sell. So pretty classic when the originals are missing or pitted or whatever. Door speakers. Does appear to be missing a VIN plate here. Not sure where that made off to. No sound deadening or headliner. Again, fine. Lots of trucks do it. Makes it lighter to remove the top and easier if there's no side panels because you have to get to all those bolts to actually pull it off. It is just going to give, you're going to see all those bolts. It's just going to be a little bit noisier. You're going to get some tin canning wobbling from that typically as you're driving around. Boom, bringing the bass. Okay. This looks like it fits decently well, but it looks like it was sort of a generic unit maybe, because it's not like super molded to it. But you want that sub, man, you got it. Okay, into the engine bay. So this is where it gets a little bit messy to me. So first of all, I don't see a washer bottle reservoir, and I don't see any washer hoses. So there's no, again, this isn't like, that's a very simple thing. It's like $50 for a washer bottle and hose kit. Pretty cheap, but they for whatever reason they didn't do it. I don't quite understand that because it's cheap and just a finished thing. They skimped out on that. It does have, so they did remove the heater box for the underdash unit. They've made sort of just a block off plate to cover the holes for that. And then there's a few other holes that it looks like they just put some tape over and sort of painted it all, just sprayed out the fire, like the entire engine bay black. Not stoked about that treatment. You can either get plugs, or you can seam seal it, or you can weld in plugs. So if you're doing a high-end restoration, that's the right way. Putting tape over it and painting it, not awesome. LS swap. It looks like just a generic radiator. The radiator should be mounted to this hole here. There's two on each side. It is not mounted to those, so I'm not sure how this is mounted, but it's just kind of a generic radiator. It's not a Scout specific radiator. They don't have any kind of fan shroud. It's just a generic electric fan that gets pushed through there. Again, not the best. I'm sure it functions, but not great. And then as far as wiring, you just start to tell again the level of care when stuff isn't loomed, when it's got just like these generic Walmart ends that gets crimped on, and there's like a little bit of exposed wire next to all those, and stuff's just run a little bit haphazard. It's not really thought through. It's just okay. Let's put an engine in this, get it running. We don't care about serviceability, reliability. We just want it to run and drive as quick as possible. Those are the vibes I'm getting from this. We know that kind of truck. I've looked at tons and tons of these types of trucks. Some of them keep running and driving. Some of them don't. You got to take it to the shop often. Stainless headers. It's got these some type of valve cover situation here. They put some International, try and harken back to the old school IH guys a little bit. So again, just like missing some screws in here. So it's just kind of just an incomplete build. Yeah, you can definitely get a better picture of the tape on the firewall there. Not awesome. And we typically, for our trucks, we run our intake into the inner fender. I don't know if there's a bigger picture of this. We run that into the inner fender so we get fresh air through that. We found that we lost about, I think it was like 15, 20 horsepower just from having hot intake air temperatures. So that's a little trick you can do to get a little more pep out of this thing. Again, they're kind of running like just a little bit of patched together stuff here. Nothing necessarily unique and specific for Scouts. You got coiled up wire, just some excess stuff. Loose individual wires running around. Not great. It does appear to have disc brakes in the front. This is a disc drum reservoir when the bigger one pumps the discs there. 72 should typically have drum. I'm not sure if you could option discs in the front in 72. I think you could option them in 74, and then by 73 you could option them, and then by 74 they were standard. So it's possible somebody just swapped something in. Again, missing the washer hose situation there. It's kind of well, we'll keep moving here. So they didn't block that off, which is interesting. They blocked this one off. This appears to be open, maybe, and that goes into the cab through here. Yeah, I don't know what they're doing with that. We'll keep moving. Yep, so it's all standard. They got a little heat and sound deadening up in there. That's nice. Okay, down to the underneath. So the vibes I'm getting from this one was, so this was not a full restoration, is what is becoming apparent to me. They may have taken the body off the frame. We do that even if we're just doing an engine conversion. We take a body off. Body off restoration doesn't actually tell you anything because it's very easy to take these bodies off. So they may have taken the body off, but the frame and everything, the vibes I'm getting was this was all just sort of painted out black. They got sort of the Speedway motor mounts there. It does have disc brakes, so it looks all stock to me. So 44, Dana 44 front with disc brakes. I believe this is a Skyjacker lift kit. Okay, nothing unique yet. Upgraded U-bolt blades, newer drag link. The tie rod is stock. I'm guessing these tie rod ends look newer, which is nice. Tie rod ties the wheels together. Drag link is what drags the front axle from the steering box. Is our straight steer brace here, fresh with the white powder coat. So you can see it's missing a bump stop here. It looks like maybe it broke off. I'm not sure what that is. So it does have the bump stop here, doesn't have one here, and that just limits up travel. So when you hit a big bump, your axle is going to go up until the axle tube here hits on this bump, and that keeps the wheels from jamming into the fender. So this side does not have that, so theoretically your wheel could just go. The only thing that stops your wheel is once the axle hits the frame or your wheel hits the fender, which is going to happen first. So that's not great. Again, just a little thing. This wasn't a full restoration. They didn't, I don't know if they just didn't care, if they missed it. So we got a CV in the front, just helps with some of the geometry depending on how they have this. Typically, if you have a CV, that means you want your pinion pointed at the output of the transfer case, which means your axle is really shifted up. And so that's either going to give you terrible steering in this, or they should have done a cut and turn to where they rotate the knuckles and the pinion. You can look at that stuff on our website. So this thing's either going to have terrible steering or it's been modified and is great. I don't know. I guess we'll see. This shift kit, I haven't seen anything like this, but again, they're using a B&M, so that's kind of custom. I'm not sure what to think of that. Sometimes that stuff is crisp, sometimes there's a lot of slop. Just depends on how they built it and their level of acceptability. Looks like stock e-brake setup. So now we're back to the rear axle. Fuel tank is right above us here. Again, the rear axle, you can see nothing got sandblasted, and maybe you got pressure washed, but otherwise it looks like they just painted up everything to kind of freshen it up. New beefy shackles. Back to the front. This is the driver's side tie rod end. Looks new, a little bit extended, but not bad. Those brake hoses, yeah, there should be. So it's got a lift. These look like stock brake hoses, but I think there's enough slop there. Typically when you put a lift, then you're going to get more articulation, and so you need to put longer brake hoses. Otherwise, when you start to articulate, you pull that brake hose tight. These look like they have enough length to them. Maybe. That one looks a little tight there, but it's hard to say from this angle. So again, that's just one of those little things where it's like if you don't really know fully about Scouts or building these, you may not do. I'm guessing these are okay. This exhaust looks a little hodgepodge in my, oh yeah, right there. Put a little splice in there. Maybe this was an exhaust from another truck, and then they spliced it on it like it went to a stock IH truck, and they like the side pipes, and if they're building a bunch of trucks, and they just grab it, reuse it, but maybe it was a little short, they pop that in there. Either way, not a built from scratch system, so this was pieces put together. Again, not the worst. If it doesn't leak, great. If they got good weld penetration, all that stuff, awesome. But it just starts to let you in on the level of truck that they're building.
Yo, dude.
And so this is underneath here. We're gonna keep moving here. Yeah.
Did you take my DA?
Oh, Michael Shuka. So we'll keep going, checking this stuff out. Custom built cross member. I don't know anybody that's selling that, so looks like they built that from scratch. Not a bad setup. So it has the stock transfer case. It looks like a 241 stock slip yoke in the back, and that just as the rear axle compresses, that drive shaft is going to get more horizontal, and it's going to actually kind of extend forward, and so you need a slip joint there. We typically go to a slip yoke eliminator, which makes that length between the transfer case and the axle longer and gives it a shallower angle, and that just makes the U-joints last a little longer and prevents binding. This truck might be on the verge with the lift kit it has. Boy, I feel like I'm in a Beastie Boys video with all these fisheye lenses. Can we get a good picture of that fuel pump? Okay, so it's got external fuel pump. So I'm guessing, I think it had the stock 19-gallon fuel tank. And nobody's really making a drop-in fuel pump for that system, so you have to run an external pump. Looks like it has a pre-filter and a post-filter, which is good, and a regulating filter, so this one returns excess pressure. External fuel pumps are a little bit noisier, well actually quite a bit noisier, and they run hotter because they're not in fuel, and so they typically burn out faster. So those are the cons. Currently we only run internal fuel pumps on our 30-gallon tank. You can get a little bit glimpse of that. Ooh, so right here, interesting. I think this is the first picture of kind of the cab mount. So this is the front passenger side mount, and this should be very different. There's supposed to be what's called a cab mount and a wedge right here, and those always rust out. Every single truck, they always rust out. I think I've seen like 2 or 3 trucks that they don't, and that's incredible. Because they're just pockets. They collect moisture and dirt. And so it looks like these ones just got cut out, and then they just put like a piece of 1x2 flat across there, which I'm sure functions fine. You just have to hold the truck up and keep it from shifting too much. But again, not a full restoration, not done correctly as far as returning it to factory spec or factory or better, in my opinion. And so that tells you that these guys either don't know about Scouts or just are kind of skimping along, or maybe they think they got a better system than the stock cab mounts and wedges, which is possible. Typically when I've seen this, it's kind of like that backyard fab style. Okay, so here's, you can continue to see that this was not a full restoration. The bottom of this just got like barely overspray paint. They didn't really sand it, clean it off. Nothing got sandblasted. It looks like the stock rocker, because the stock rocker should dip down here. They are missing both the bolts that hold the front fender on here, and this fender kind of got folded over, so you actually couldn't put the bolt through if you wanted to. Get a little bit better glimpse of that wedge and cab mount that aren't there as far as the sheet metal work. And we got some videos about some of that stuff, so you can check that out to compare and contrast. This is the rear, so it should be spot welded on. That's the rear fender, so there's no bolts there. Passenger side front inner fender. Again, not sandblasted. There is some undercoating from the factory in here, and it looks like they just sprayed on. You know, you just go get a can from the auto parts store, spray it on even thicker. Frame looks like it was just painted out black. Got maybe some drips here. Not sure what that would be from. Maybe an AC line or something. Rear floor is the rear axle looking forward under the rear floor. This is the stock rear floor, which is good. Those thin ribs are stock panels. A lot of exposed wires here, which I'm not stoked about. Typically under the truck you want to loom that stuff, in my opinion, just because there's a lot of debris, road stuff, whatever. Exposed wires, it's just you only have one level of protection between electricity and chaos, and so looming that stuff keeps it clean and then also protects it. This rear brake line is an interesting situation. Let's see if we can get a better picture of that. So this looks like the brake line here. Again, they put a lift, so the brake line was too short, and so they put sort of a jumper line in with it to extend it. Not great. Another point of exposure there. Typically you just get a longer brake hose kit and run a single line for that. This is rear driver's side corner. Filler hose here. Typically emissions hoses here, but it's LS, so I'm guessing they just capped all that stuff off. Kind of undercoated it. 19-gallon stock tank. It looks like the steel tank, and it's just painted black, so it's original tank, just blacked out. Keep going. So has the bump stop on both sides in the rear here. So this is the driver's side rear bump stop. Okay, here you get a better picture of that brake line. So here's the, like, maybe the original is here, and then they added this little extension thing. Not the worst, not the best. You could do it better. It looks like, again, this is a cost savings technique in my opinion. So that just lets you in on how the rest of the truck was built. Yep, rear axle painted up, rear drum brakes. Drum brakes aren't the worst. A lot of people kind of hate drum brakes and they always go to disc, but unless you're like towing a bunch of grade, or like towing or doing a bunch of grades where you're using your brakes constantly, a good rebuilt, well set up set of drums is you can lock them up. So it's for the average user. Stock drum brakes are perfectly fine. Disc front brakes. Disc brakes in the front are good. So this all, nothing really spectacular to see here. Undercoated again, just glopped on there a little bit. You never know with that kind of stuff. It's like, man, they could just put like fiberglass underneath there and then undercoat it, and you never know. This truck, I haven't necessarily seen evidence of that. The front rocker had me, or the front cab mount had me a little sketched out, but everything else says this was a clean truck to begin with. It's under the front floor. Oh, there's a much better picture of that. So that was the cab mount, and you can see they cut the floor here with the cab mount and got rid of that and just put this piece of bar across. So it's just kind of the cheaper way. You don't have to buy, kind of original correct parts. You just go get some 1x2 stock, weld it in there, call it a day. Driver's side front inner fender, there should be, I believe, a bolt through there, so that's sort of hodgepodge. Again, more just undercoating to the moon, man. Glob it on there. So this, it doesn't even look like they pressure washed it. It looks like they just sort of wiped it down and painted it or undercoated it. You can see there's not really crisp tape mark on the paint here. There's sort of overspray onto the inner fender. Rear wheel well, very heavily undercoated. This should be much more prominent. You can see cracking in the undercoating. It's so thick. Yeah, man, you just go to AutoZone, get yourself a bottle of Rust-Oleum undercoating and have at it. Again, that kind of stuff, not necessarily the worst thing, but just not great. There's that VIN plate. And maybe that's a year thing also, that it was on the opposite side. Those early trucks I'm not super familiar with. This is a bunch of receipts. I don't necessarily care about that. If you're buying the truck, you can certainly look at those. So here, the rear quarter. It was original and nice to begin with, so that's good. Front fender was original and nice. You can see maybe some corrosion of the hardtop there, but not too bad. Front floors, you get a glimpse that they did cut those out there. You can see all the weld marks in that. So they cut those out. Original rear floor, great. Repainted fully as suspected. Hardtop painted up as suspected. Pristine LS2 powered. Okay, so got some outside shots. Not necessarily seeing anything new. Might kind of burn through these. Running long on time. Okay, well that's all of them. So this is a nice truck. Don't let me tell you otherwise. But those are just some of the things that I look at and tips and tricks to see when you're looking at a truck. Again, telling that level of build. Is this like my cousin painted it in the backyard with like rattle cans, or is this like legit concourse show restoration, or there's kind of resto mod status, which is this, and then there's the level of, again, between my cousin painting with a spray can in the backyard and somebody who's been doing this for 25 years. And so trying to figure out where that level is, how much they care, how much effort they put into it, how much time and money. Because even painting, you can just paint over the original paint, it looks great, but it's gonna flake off. So you gotta scuff, you gotta prep it, you gotta do all these things to make the longevity last. Longevity last, that doesn't even make sense, but to make it last. And so a lot of those things are just tips and tricks to look at it and go, okay, this is the level, so that probably means this. So anyways, if you stuck around this far, that's great. Thanks for looking at Scouts with us. And if there's anything you want to see or know, or anything you can teach me that I missed or was incorrect about, go ahead and leave it in the comments. And if you guys like these, we'll keep doing more of them. Okay, thanks.